Live from London, it's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
A very good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week, the one show where you don't have to worry about doing any judging because we do it all for you. First up, though, Alex Phillips is here, Russell Quirk is here, Will Geddes is here, Steve Denyer is here. Welcome to all of you. Welcome to Plank of the Week. Let's kick it off straight away with the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Shall we?
Can I just have this permanent chair here and it's just permanently Sir Keir Starmer? Done, dusted, win every week. It's so obvious, it's so easy.
Yes.
Keir Starmer,
this
surely.
week,
Keir
this
Starmer.
week, I'm going to stop you there and ask you just to watch this. This week, he started his first Prime Minister's questions by referring to Rishi Sunak as the Prime Minister. Not once, but 3 times. Have a look at this.
The Prime Minister knows the framework. It's the same test for all licences that the Prime Minister knows. I don't think the Prime Minister is really inviting me to put that to one side. We have to, the Leader of the Opposition.
So, tell us why you're nominating him specifically.
He really doesn't have much idea. But
He
if he's being haunted by the ghosts of Prime Ministers past,
Yes.
he's certainly showing it, isn't he?
He
Because
is.
he's apparently taken down the picture of Margaret Thatcher that
Yes.
Gordon Brown had commissioned,
Yes.
a painting of her.
Yes.
And it was put in 10 Downing Street.
And it was put in a place called the Thatcher Room, wasn't it?
Right.
So now the Thatcher Room doesn't have a picture of Margaret Thatcher in it.
I mean, it's just it just suggests that this is a man who's incredibly prickly, but also there is something quite sinister about this. When you have that much sort of hatred or that much sort of venom about somebody or something who doesn't even exist anymore, when you're that committed to your political ideology that you start, I don't know, taking paintings down, you're joining the ranks of some pretty nutty tyrants.
It's a bit cultural revolutionary type,
It is,
isn't it?
yeah.
You know, let's wipe out the past and pretend.
Well, and frankly, I mean, who wouldn't? I mean, surely everyone's got a picture of Margaret Thatcher somewhere, haven't they?
Yeah, I do.
I would have thought so. Have you got one?
Here's
there we are.
something I prepared
Do
earlier.
you know what I love? Is this the same one as last time? Is this a different one?
No, it's a different one.
You've got loads of
Well,
them,
wait for
haven't
it. You ain't seen nothing yet, Alex Phillips.
Let's have a look at the cartoon. This is a cartoon that's gone viral. It's got Keir Starmer sort of hiding behind the sofa as they remove the aforementioned offensive portrait. And there he is, standing side by side with the Iron Lady. If only she was still here.
If only she was still here.
Yeah.
Should have taken like a little lock of hair and cloned her. Don't you?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, what would she make of it all now?
Let's develop Sir Keir Starmer's week, shall we? Because, you know, this is a guy who has had yet another bad week for Labour. We'll be getting into a bit of some of the other MPs and all the rest of it. But, you know, old comical Lammy, as I now call him, David Lammy, got himself into all kinds of trouble with Israel and with America by managing to piss everybody off, basically, by declaring that he was going to ban weapons sales to Israel, but not very many of them. He was going to ban 30 companies and 30 licences were going to be suspended out of 350. And Starmer gets up again in House of Commons and says, oh, it was a legal decision. I mean, does he think that we're absolutely stupid? Everybody knows it was a political decision. It was not a legal decision.
It smacks to me, Mike, having been on the peripheries of arms deals in various parts of the world.
I don't think you can be on the periphery of an arms deal. I think you're either in the arms deal.
Every week.
Allegedly.
You're either in the arms deal or you're not.
Allegedly. I may have known a
Just
few
peeking
people.
over the fence and seeing it, what's going on.
You know what? When there's only 30-odd companies out of, 350 that have been banned, that smells of something rather considered rather than anything else. Because you either do it wholesale or not at all.
And also for Keir
what
Starmer,
are these 30 companies? Why they specifically were banned?
Well, they haven't given us a reason for that. Apparently there will be a document which they're going to produce.
I'm sure
but also, he's claiming that, you know, this was done by the Attorney General with a view to the breach of international law. But when Lammy made the announcement, he was talking about a possible future breach of the international law. So again, you get these lawyers, you get people like Starmer, who's a lawyer, who's a boring man, who's trying to hide behind the law, and actually there is no law. They haven't broken any law.
No, it's posturing. It's ideology.
It's
we know it is. And it's trying to play to their audience, play to their crowd.
Yeah.
And obviously the substantial Muslim bloc vote that Labour wants to continue to attract.
Yeah.
Yes. I may be coming to that.
Well, let's have more on Keir Starmer from you. But first, we've got a clip, I think, haven't we, of Sir Keir Starmer meeting one of his fans.
Because we may as well have a Tory if we have a person like you who lies to the party, dishonesty, and our health services go right down the pan, and you have a big responsibility, the working class people of this country. Excuse me, you just don't be getting physical.
No, I'm not touching you. Can you move back then, please?
You're touching my breast.
Can you move back, please?
I like her.
Look at that.
I like her a lot. She gets my vote.
I mean,
we knew her on.
you can see his absolute absolute fear on his face because he doesn't know how to talk to people.
There's something else there. There's a sort of like that. It goes completely blank.
Like
and
robot.
There's like slight, like a deathly haze that appears above his eyes.
Do you know, he came in to see us at Virgin Radio the week before the election.
And funny enough, he didn't stop at talk.
I was waiting for him. Didn't pop his head round your door.
I was waiting for him.
But he did. He looked straight through you. It's a very kind of unsettling, really strange experience.
Do you think because everything he's going to say is completely rehearsed and it's just it's not a natural
I think he's constantly frightened. Well, that was the famous interview with Chris Evans where he said that he wasn't going to work beyond 6 o'clock on a Friday because he had a very strict rule that he didn't do it. And then, of course, as soon as the first Friday came along, he was working. I mean, he just keeps saying things that he then
just contradicts
goes back on,
Yeah.
which, in my view, makes him a liar, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's a bit like, not telling us that you're going to do away with the winter fuel allowance.
Well, we'll come on to that.
Not telling us what he was going to do around immigration and so on.
What I don't get is, good old Mel Gibson wrote something on Twitter the other day, which I quite enjoyed. And he put, once upon a time...
Was he recovered from his period of madness?
I don't know, but this wasn't a mad comment, can I just say?
Mel Gibson,
this wasn't a mad comment. So, maybe he has, because he said, once upon a time we fought the communists, now we're talking about electing them.
Yes.
And this is a really interesting point, because Keir Starmer was in a workers' camp, a Soviet workers' camp in former Czechoslovakia, managed by a very senior USSR spy, and now he's our Prime Minister.
Yeah.
I'm like...
I know.
Surely that's a big deal.
Well,
surely
don't worry,
we should
though.
talk about
don't worry,
this.
because he's got some very reliable MPs behind him. One of them, I think, is your nomination, Russell.
Yes. The newly elected Jas Athwal, who is the MP for Ilford South, and former leader of Redbridge Council. And in that particular role, when he was leader of Redbridge Council, he was very vocal about a few things. And one of those things in particular he was very vocal about was standards of rental properties. And he went as far as to say, when he was leader of Redbridge Council, that if you're a bad landlord, a slum landlord, we're coming for you. We're going to come and get you.
He's an expert on slum landlording, isn't he?
Guess what? That might not have aged very well, Jas Athwal, because, yes, he's just been found out as a part of a BBC investigation. So, look, the BBC can actually do things properly.
Well, they can. There's the tweet there.
There's the tweet. So, effectively, of his 15 properties, bearing in mind he's now the biggest landlord in Parliament, the majority of them, it seems, certainly those that were seen by the BBC journalists and in comment that's actually come out now from the tenants that occupy those properties are full of, I quote, mould, ants, and so on. They are disgusting. They are a disgrace. And actually, his response at first was just to kind of shrug his shoulders. Then he threw his letting agent under the bus and says it's their fault, as if he has no responsibility.
He was shocked.
So a man that owns probably 4 or 5 million quid's worth of properties hasn't seen them for years.
Doesn't know them.
We've
got a little clip for you. This is him being criticised by the London Renters Union.
But there are growing calls for Labour to take firmer action against Mr Athwal.
As a landlord, he is responsible to make sure that his houses are safe. He's responsible for following the law. We simply cannot trust our government to take care of us as renters and to solve a housing crisis with people like Jas Athwal in power. We think the only thing that is enough is for him to resign.
Yeah, so the most unpopular landlord in the world, by the looks of it. This is what he said, though, after you described him kind of shrugging his shoulders. I'm shocked and sickened by the serious problems that have come to light. I had not been aware of these issues until this week, for which I am furious. I've immediately dismissed the managing agent of my properties. I mean, you're in property, Russell.
Well, can I just say,
is it possible that he couldn't have known?
I've tried to find out with a fair bit of kind of delving and a bit of effort who the letting agent was to give him the right of reply, because he's thrown him under the bus. No one seems to know in the industry of which I'm part who that letting agent was. So, I don't know. Dare I speculate? Maybe there wasn't even a letting agent. Who knows?
Goodness me. Well, somebody obviously runs the business for him if he's got that many properties.
So, but it doesn't admonish his responsibilities.
No, it doesn't.
Legally or morally.
I like where Russell's going with this. I mean, I think next time something goes wrong in my life, I'm going to fire my make-believe personal assistant.
Yes, absolutely right.
I do that weekly.
Many times.
Personal assistants.
It wouldn't be the first time, Steve, would it, that somebody in the sort of public eye does that? I mean, celebs do it all the time.
Oh, absolutely.
It wasn't my fault.
Publicist.
It was that publicist who, shouldn't have never said that, or should never have allowed me to say it. Anyway, moving on. Will Geddes, yet another Labour MP.
Oh, yes.
Here we go. We're 3 in. It's 3 for 3.
So I've got the lovely Jess "The Stress" Phillips.
Yes.
Who has come out with this audacious story about the fact that she jumped the queue at her local A&E with the NHS because she voted for the ceasefire in Gaza.
Yes, right.
And apparently the doctor was Palestinian, so that got her to the front of the
She claims
queue.
that she went to A&E. She doesn't. I can't remember what she went there for.
I do, and I will tell you in a moment.
Go on.
So she came in and she basically she said she went to A&E with breathing difficulties. Now I can tell you there are 3 things that will push you to the front of the queue: breathing, heart conditions, or any head injuries.
Chest pain.
So yes, heart or chest pain, and head injuries. That will get you to the front of the queue regardless.
Yeah.
So this utter nonsense of her saying, well, because she voted for the Gaza ceasefire, which actually didn't push through anyway.
No.
Keir Starmer was opposed to it.
But she wanted to make the point, didn't she?
She wanted to make the point that she was so liberal and that. But the other thing which also I found astounding about her statement was that she said the state of the NHS is far worse than I've seen in war zones.
Right.
Now, I did some cursory research onto Google, and I can't see any information or evidence of her ever visiting a war zone.
Yeah.
She's made all sorts of statements.
Birmingham, obviously.
Apart from Birmingham, I mean, you don't get more hostile than that.
Yeah.
You don't get more hostile than that. But and no offence to our Brummy viewers, but. I would say, she's talked about the Sudan, she's talked about Yemen, she's talked about the Ukraine, but she hasn't visited any one of these countries.
No.
And I can tell you, some of those countries that I have actually been to, the healthcare systems are actually pretty rotten and probably not as good as the NHS.
Yes, probably not.
Yeah.
But the thing is, she deliberately made this point in a podcast, and it sort of backfired on her because I think some of these politicians haven't worked out that when you are doing a podcast, they're recorded and people actually listen to them. Because they talk to each other as if they're having these little love-ins.
It's like a private conversation.
It's like a private conversation.
Yeah.
And when it comes out, they all go, "Oh, I didn't realise it was going to be actually publicised."
Yeah.
But the idea, and of course it backfired on the NHS because I think she said that every doctor in the A&E was Palestinian, which I'm sure is also probably not true.
I mean, I'm sorry. I call it Jess the stress Phillips, but it should be Jess the bullshitter.
There is definitely some room for that. Let's have a look at what happened when she was asked if she wanted to be leader of the Labour Party.
Do you think that you could be leader of the Labour Party?
I mean, it's the way everybody asked the question in just a slightly different way. And what you said was, do you think that you could be the leader of the Labour Party? And of course, the answer to that question is, of course, somebody like me could be the leader of the Labour Party.
Do you want to be the leader?
The leader of the Labour Party is an entirely different question.
Do you want to be?
I literally want to go to bed more than I've ever wanted anything.
That's a bit forward, isn't it? I mean, she's only been interviewing her for 2 minutes. She wants to go to bed with her.
We're only getting the weekend started.
But surely it's also, I mean, I guess this is what you're getting at. She's a plank not for having done that and allowed herself to jump the queue.
No.
She's also a plank for actually telling everybody that she managed to jump the queue.
Right.
But also the fact that she hasn't given a second thought for the people that were behind her in the queue.
No.
Yeah. People that had a legitimate right to be there were probably next.
Who
Jess Phillips rocks up with her sharp elbows and says, "No, I'm next."
And the implication, perhaps, that if you're Jewish, you would be at the back.
You'd be at the back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The thing is about Jess Phillips is that the mainstream media, the typical leftist lot, have fawned over her, thought she's brilliant, isn't she great?
Yeah.
She's straight
She's
talking.
so down to earth.
She's a woman, as if like 50% of the population don't have a vagina.
Right.
And all of a sudden, guess what? She's now in she's now in the party of government, and it turns out she's cocky, but also a bit thick.
Yeah, I know. Well, this is the problem, because one of the reasons that she will never be leader of the Labour Party is they will never elect a woman leader because they're the only political party in the country, in the whole of Great Britain, that is, not just in England and Wales, who haven't ever had a woman lead them.
No,
I don't know if there's some kind of misogynistic problem inside the Labour Party.
They also don't know what a woman is. So,
Well, they're still debating that, Alex. They're still debating that.
I'm sure that if David Lammy were to put on a frock, he
Comical
might
Lammy.
stand a chance.
Yeah, he might well do. Well, I mean,
I just find
it's even more ridiculous that he actually got one of the key jobs in the cabinet, Secretary of State for Foreign and Commonwealth Office. Are you having a laugh?
You know what I want to see? You haven't got it, but I want to. I'm going to have to look at it after this, aren't I? The Lammy on Mastermind. I just love it. I can't get enough of it.
Isn't that a contradiction in terms to have Lammy and Mastermind in the same sentence?
So
well, it was so funny. We played it a couple of weeks ago, and he gets every single question wrong, apart from the questions he passes on. Because obviously he didn't know the answer to those, but the ones that he guessed, he got them all wrong. My favourite was that when who was it that succeeded Henry VII? And he said Henry VI. and you just go, in any world, that's not really working. Yeah. Right, Steve, over to you. Biggest story of the week, I suppose.
Guys,
you might say.
I'm going to break the Labour theme and go for the elephant in the room, Oasis.
Although, let's not forget, when Tony Blair was in Parliament and was in the Prime Minister's office and he was in Downing Street, he had all the Kill Britannia lot, didn't they? Because I think Liam and Noel went to Downing Street. Did they not say they snorted a line in the toilets or something?
Yeah, they did.
I think they did. Anyway, sorry.
It was the 90s.
Yes.
No.
Yeah, right.
I mean, obviously, so, you mentioned that there's a whole kind of generation of people who grew up with these songs and these boys, and people have been, living, breathing, hoping that they get back together for 15 years. And on Saturday morning, the tickets went on sale. Now, I'm putting Oasis into the plankery instead of Ticketmaster because Oasis made this statement at 9 o'clock on Saturday, and they said, we're just condoning the tickets at face value, which are like 70 quid,
right.
Standing, 150 quid at Wembley Stadium, seated. And then, a few hours later, when Ticketmaster put the prices up in the surge, they said, actually, we're going with this. So,
So Oasis owned it, basically.
They owned it. So they went back on it. So there's lots of people who spent, 8 hours or even longer in the queue.
Right.
And you suddenly get these inflated prices. You panic.
Right.
And you get logged out. And that's what happened to literally millions of people.
And there was a lot of problems with the original sale in the morning, wasn't there? Because there were so many people. I mean, I saw people posting things like, I'm 228,000 in the queue. Yeah. And you're kind of going, that's such a big number. You can't even begin to work out how long that's going to take.
And all the Irish ticket sites at the beginning, they crashed, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, Ticketmaster did. So it went out in Glasgow, in Birmingham, Manchester, all the big cities, it went down. By the time it did recover, of course, you're in 9 hours. You're waiting for 9 hours.
Well, I know people who just wasted their entire Saturday. Because they couldn't leave. It's like being a fruit machine in Vegas. You can't leave in case it pays out.
Aren't those people the planks, though? Aren't those people the planks? Because rather than spend, I don't know, £500 million on a ticket to go see Oasis, you could just go down the local Wetherspoons dressed as Jimmy Savile and throw urine on yourself. Save yourself some money.
That's an interesting
pastime. Usual activity at the weekend.
I hate Oasis. I really don't like it.
We can, though, as is the theme of this particular episode of Plank, we can bring that particular segment back to the Labour Party.
We can, because Lisa Nandy, of course, decided to put her oar in and say that, the government might have to launch an investigation into surge pricing of the tickets, right? But let's have a look. This is some sad Oasis fans who I think didn't manage to get tickets.
For many, a case of denial.
I feel like this is giving me hope.
Anger.
Pretty confident this did not work.
Bargaining.
I'll pay for the ticket, that's fine, but you can camp in my garden.
Before depression.
It's not looking good either.
And eventually acceptance.
I mean, the funny thing is that a lot of these kids who are getting tickets, I call them kids because I can, because I'm really old, they weren't around in the 90s. They weren't around in the 90s.
Yeah, but Noel said recently, that's what happens. So this is why this band is so pivotal. These songs have gone kind of multi-generational. People know Don't Look Back in Anger. That's probably a great example. When the Manchester bombing happened, that was the song that was played at the memorial. Do you remember? So we've kind of grown up with these songs and with this band. And those songs are so huge. This is a big deal. But mainly for them.
Like I said, they don't know what those concerts are going to be like, do they?
They are going to make an awful lot of money. I suspect they will be kind of Oasis light concerts because it will be lots of older people who might have thrown beer cans when they were 19 or 20, but now that they've got kids and they're in their 40s, they're not going to do that because they've got to worry about how they're going to get home. They're not going to do
the shows
loads and loads of drugs. I wonder if it will be anywhere near as good. I saw Oasis because a friend of mine put them on in Scotland, and I mean it was absolute mayhem. They often threatened to go off stage if they didn't get bottles thrown at them, because they were getting bottles thrown at them constantly, and they were like, if you don't stop throwing them, we're walking off, and it was unbelievable. Anyway, it's a great start, though. 4 fantastic nominations. Coming up, I'm going to go for yet another member of the government, I'm afraid, Angela Rayner. But also, there's some football coming up as well with Alex. We'll be back after this. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. It's time now for my first nomination, and I am going to go with the woman who is rather still called, I think, the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, the woman who once called the Tories scum, the woman who a lot of people think is the life and soul of the Labour Party, because when you talk about Keir Starmer being robotic and kind of, completely and utterly emotionless, she's the complete opposite to that. We only saw her just last week, I think, in Ibiza, raving, Angela Raver, some people were calling her, which a lot of people think is great. They go, oh, well, that makes her seem a bit human, doesn't it? But she's come back, and there she is, raving in the DJ booth. But again, using her privilege, as a member of cabinet, to be out of the way of the crowd and up where the sort of, supposed celeb DJs are. And everybody knows what happens in Ibiza. Nobody talks about it, but, basically, people
Stuff
take...
was for sale.
Yeah, people take a lot of drugs and dance around. I'm not saying she did. I have no idea. But anyway, so since she's come back, she's managed to upset even more people, right? Because first of all, she's got the problem of suggesting that everyone should go on a 4-day week, which business has basically said you're going to shut business down if you do this, because not a lot of people can do that. Then, of course, she decided that it would be a great idea to ban the sale of council houses, despite the fact that she made quite a nice profit at the time, 48,000 quid, from the sale of her council house.
Yeah.
So it's another case of she can do whatever she wants, but you can't.
Yeah, mass hypocrisy. And also this week, she was asked to define the government's definition of Islamophobia.
Yes. Well, I was coming to that. I was coming to that because I've got that clip.
Could the Secretary of State please explain to me and the House what the government's definition of Islamophobia actually is?
I say to the honourable member that a new definition must be given careful consideration so that it comprehensively reflects multiple perspectives and considers potential implications for different communities. And we're actively considering our approach to Islamophobia, including definitions, and we'll provide further updates on this in due course.
That guy to her left has got no idea what she's talking about.
She knows what she's talking about.
Neither has anybody
she
else.
Read any of those words on the bit of paper.
A civil servant's put that in front of her 10 minutes previously.
Yeah.
I mean,
Couldn't you tell?
Do we think she's just a bit thick?
I think she is a bit thick. And I mean, she did, there's nothing against working class people, which is what you all get accused of. If you have a go at her and you go, you're either a misogynist or you're against working class people.
Yeah.
She actually blocked me on Twitter many years ago.
Badge of honour.
Because she was on Question Time, and I think I questioned how intelligent she actually was.
Yeah.
And was she intelligent enough to be on Question Time?
Yeah.
Singer, that was it. And I haven't been able to see one of her tweets since. But I do wonder sometimes whether in the definitions that they're going to give us all for this hate speech that we're all going to be apparently getting ourselves involved in, where on that scale is scum? If you call somebody Tory scum, is that hate speech? I don't know.
Mike, I'd have to say I wouldn't hold your breath to getting that definition because she used that lovely catch-all, in due course.
Yeah.
Which means they're under
Well,
no
I mean,
time
it highlights,
to deliver
it highlights,
on
does
that
it not,
definition.
Alex, the problem with trying to come up with these definitions, because you can't define certain things absolutely, because there's no absolute, because you have to know how somebody means it, what their intention is. It's like incitement to violence.
There should be no such thing as hate crime, full stop,
Right.
on any account, because if you attack somebody, if you harass somebody, if you injure somebody, if you steal from somebody, like those are covered by, I don't know, crime, criminal law.
Yeah, but nothing happens
the
to you
rest
for any
of
of
it
that.
is just a nonsense. Although I would say, given her sort of past form in the old beefer, whoosh, I think she's the only one of the Labour lot who actually don't mind a bit of Maggie.
Yeah, exactly right.
I must say, I would quite like to have a night out with her.
Yeah.
In Ibiza.
Yeah.
With a bit of backstage access.
I'm sure it'd be quite funny.
I wouldn't want backstage access with
I'm sure
her.
she'd be great fun. But the problem is she is Deputy Prime Minister. The other thing is that she's actually been rowed out of that job because while most of the summer months were with Keir Starmer working in Downing Street, I mean, whether she was on holiday or not, she doesn't have much responsibility for government affairs.
She's been since July the 5th, so she just hasn't been around.
No.
So we saw her very, very briefly at the tragedy of that fire in Dagenham.
Yeah.
That was the night, actually, that she went off to Ibiza.
Yeah.
So she's gone from kind of, talking sympathetically about the plight of the residents of that particular block, literally goes straight to the airport and goes off to Ibiza. But apart from that, we haven't seen her for
I mean, I'm not one of those people that minds that she went on holiday. I don't care that she goes on holiday. Some people have a
she's
go
been
at her.
invisible.
But I think she's been deliberately rowed out of all sorts of conversations by Sue Gray, who's the woman who's the sort of power behind the throne, who sits in her little cabinet office in Downing Street, deciding who can see the Prime Minister, deciding which appointments can be made that she approves of and which appointments cannot be made in the civil service and all over the place. And so she's the real de facto Prime Minister.
Angela Rayner becomes the new Diane Abbott.
Yeah.
Over the next few months,
Yeah.
where she will say stupid things that we all lampoon.
Well, I think
she'll be kept back.
Well, I wonder if she's not being put out there just in case she does say stupid things. And that's why she's being literally kept on a short leash.
Yeah, which is pretty inconvenient when she's the Deputy Prime Minister and also the Secretary of State for Housing.
Yeah, but Deputy Prime Minister is a bit of a fake news job, unless like Keir Starmer, like Boris, ends up on a ventilator.
But she is also Secretary of State for something as well.
Housing, communities, local government.
There's a load of other ministers who cover basically her portfolio. They're sort of fake news jobs. They wanted to give her a title because it's our Ange, but she's not expected to do anything.
Well, again, because the Labour Party is all about covering off bits of the party that they think they need to appeal to, and so she kind of she's good for the left wingers and the trade unionists and all that, right? Of which there's very few left. Let's move on, Alex. You've got FIFA.
Well, apparently, if a footballer thinks that something's racist, they can get out the magic sign.
Right. What, they can't just go to the referee and say, oh, there we are. What the hell is this?
Well, I
No
don't
to
know.
racism.
Oh, I don't know. Just
that looks ridiculous.
Grow a thicker skin or something.
What's going on with the guy on the left in his eyes? He's got some.
So hang on. So this is in the middle of a game. If they believe that they've had a racial slur aimed at them, they stop and do is that the signal?
I mean, what?
Or you could
like
do what Zinedine
90,000
Zidane does and just headbutt the guy in the chest. Eh?
It's 90,000 people in a stadium, and someone says you're a buffoon, and then someone thinks, "Oh, is that racist? I don't know who did it." I mean, what?
But isn't that close to the West Ham thing? That's their thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
so,
the Hammers.
Clearly, I've never been to a football match.
Well, I'll tell you what, we've got an explanation, I think, from FIFA. Let's have a look.
We need to give players more power to act. That's done with one move. Introducing the No Racism gesture that players around the world can use to report racist incidents during a match. This gesture will be the same everywhere, making it clear and easy to use. This gesture has been unanimously adopted by all FIFA member associations. It's a game changer for how we tackle racism in football.
It's really not a game changer for how you tackle racism in football.
I
thought they were taking the knee to tackle racism in football. Did that not work?
Can you clarify? Is this against other players or is this against spectators?
I don't know. Do they know?
You just keep walking around doing this.
And also, it's going to enter that sort of whole world of what is racist. If you call someone an absolute bonehead, is that then racist?
Apparently not.
If they decide it
What happens though? Does the game get stopped? Because what if a player decides to kind of fake the fact that he's had a racist slur thrown at him? And
that's
then
a good
does
point.
That to stop the game.
And what if also
they're not mic'd up, so how can they hear it if they're?
And also, what if he makes the sign of the cross, as we used to say in the Catholic school,
anti-racist cross,
right? Anti-racist cross, or the St Andrew's cross, maybe. What if the ref doesn't see it? Or the linesman doesn't see it, and you're just standing there.
Or actually, when they all stand in front of the goal because someone's going to try and kick a ball into the goal and they all protect themselves
That's
like
true,
this.
yeah.
Maybe what someone clever should do is shout, something really offensive. Then all the arms will go up like that. And poof, they're going to hit the crown jewels.
I mean, if there's a lull in the game, the goalkeeper hasn't seen the ball for a little while, and he crosses his arms. Everyone's going to stop.
You're the goalkeeper, he's doing this trying to save a penalty.
What happened? Who said it to you? What?
Also, it makes it sound as though there's literally somebody making a racist comment during every football game about every 5 minutes. Yeah. Which I'm pretty sure isn't the case.
I bet if you asked 100 players,
I bet it is,
the last time that they had something racist, thrown at them, they'd say, "Well, actually, I don't remember ever having anything said."
I know. But this is the thing. I mean, the taking of the knee now has become something they only do at the beginning of the first match of the season. I think the last match of the season, a couple of finals of cup matches or something. Yeah. It's become kind of ridiculous, isn't it?
They just need their new cult thing, don't they? It's all about having their little
I think I'd feel like I was about to belt out a song by Steps.
Yeah. Or do something for Simon Cowell.
Isn't it also what you do when you go cliff diving? That's the thing, isn't it? As well, apparently.
Yeah. Also, you do that. Do you not do that when you're going down those water slides? When you're at the water park, that's when you do it as well. So don't do that when you go abroad.
And when you're dead.
Never do that.
I mean, I think it's a thumbs down.
It's a racist afterlife.
It's a thumbs down from me for that. I think
Yeah, FIFA. That's not working.
X Factor, 9 danker.
Do you think they might not have thought it through?
I don't think they have. I love the fact as well. I love the fact that they use it as reason and rationale for why it's going to work. Is that every football association around the world has already adopted it.
Do you think?
Then. Do you think that's all right? Well, that will make it work.
Might just be virtue signaling nonsense.
Yeah, I think so.
Talking of which,
another one.
It actually might make me tune into football for the first time just to see them all doing it, waiting.
Yeah, who's going to be the first person to do it?
Yeah, I could be like the
absolutely.
official red button.
But you're right. Football
coming
fans.
Up on the left wing.
I mean,
there
like
he
SARS
goes,
has a hard enough job.
No, but like
to then include that.
football fans' sense of humour would suggest that somebody will shout something racist just to make
to get
something
the odds
do it.
right.
Yeah.
And have a bet. You can have a bet on it. Spread betting. How many people can you make the racist epithet at so that they make the X? Oh God. Anyway, Russell, over to you.
Yeah. So talking of virtue signalling woke nonsense,
Yes.
the Bank of England is my next nomination.
What a place.
The hapless Bank of England and Andrew Bailey, who's the governor, who
unbelievable. He's still got a job.
Well, it is, given that they printed too much money for too long, they waited too long to raise interest rates to tackle inflation. So they haven't exactly covered themselves in glory as an institution, really, over the last couple of years or so. They've been kind of roundly criticised by just about everybody.
Right.
But what they've also decided to do now is to virtue signal and to be as woke as they possibly can be. The latest edict from the Bank of England is that you must, in all situations within the Bank of England, meetings and so on, ask and respect each other's pronouns.
Of course.
So we should ask each other's pronouns at the beginnings of every interaction. Also, you shouldn't just assume that a man was born a man, woman was born a woman, and continues to be so, because it's not as simple as that, apparently. And to assume such is a micro-aggression.
Definitely, yeah. Does the Bank of England have a gender? Do you know?
What, themselves?
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. Really.
I mean, would it have a female gender, male gender, non-binary?
I don't know.
I think it'd be they, them.
But
the
point is, rather than focusing on matters of the day, which is making sure that the economy doesn't crash, making sure that the cost of borrowing to mortgage
or maybe
and so on
inflation
isn't too high, inflation being under control. No. They're actually sitting in rooms concocting this nonsense to make sure that no one's offended because there might be someone that has decided that day to identify as something different. And you must respect that, Alex.
Well, one of their big projects last year, in the midst of the kind of inflationary spiral crisis that we were in, was to make sure that on the 8th floor of the Bank of England's headquarters, they've got gender-neutral toilets.
Of course they have.
So that you can go to a gender-neutral toilet should you so wish.
Yeah.
But you have to go all the way up to the 8th floor because they couldn't put them anywhere else.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I mean, do you think they sit there thinking, like, what do we do about the question of banknotes and coins? Because they have to have a picture on, and the picture is either a man or a woman.
Yeah.
So how do we get around that? Do we put, I don't know, a frock on King Charles
Yeah.
to make sure that he kind of ticks every box and doesn't offend people that don't think a man should be? I mean ridiculous because it's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, yeah. But this is the trouble, isn't it? But an awful lot of these institutions have forgotten the business that they're doing.
It's the time, effort, and money that goes into it.
Yeah, the money. The problem I've got, these are big taxpayer-funded things.
Yeah.
The Bank of England use our money to control our money.
Yeah.
And fine, get on with doing that. Don't be wasting hundreds of thousands of pounds on nonsense.
Yeah.
Because you can bet that they've gone to an agency, there'll be a logo somewhere, there'll be a mission statement that's cost tens of thousands of pounds.
3,000-page document.
Just virtue signalling.
Rainbow lanyards and all that. Make sure the rainbow's right, because if you get the rainbow wrong, you can get all sorts of trouble.
Do you?
Oh yeah.
Wrong order.
No, you have not just the wrong order, but you have to get the different colours correct. Because otherwise certain people might get upset.
Otherwise, they think you work at the NHS.
Yes.
It's a terrible
I know,
problem,
it really is.
Which is just as
dreadful.
bad an organisation, frankly, so that would fit, wouldn't it?
Yeah, unless you're, of course, Jess Phillips, who manages to get to the front of the queue.
Stress Phillips.
What she said earlier. The other thing about Andrew Bailey is he's the guy, if you remember, who was up in front of a parliamentary committee and he couldn't remember what his salary was.
I can tell you it's £550,000.
Something like that. And he was like, I can't remember the details.
He's also, Mike, do you remember this a year or so ago? He's also the man that went public on pay restraint.
Yes.
So we must make sure that people aren't paid too much because of inflation. Right. And then went and gave a £20 million bonus across the whole of the Bank of England staff.
Nice. I think it's very generous of us.
We're getting paid more than £500,000 a year, I think, is hardly restraint.
But the fact he gave £20 million to all of the employees at the Bank of England at the same time, I mean, I think he's a muppet.
What do they all do, by the way? Also, Rachel Reeves comes to the Bank of England, so I mean,
there you go.
That tells everything. Right, coming up, we're going to be going on to television and also a bit more on the Labour government as well. This is Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. Now, we've covered over quite a lot of the misdemeanours by the Labour government so far this week, but what we haven't done is mention the winter fuel allowance. Will Geddes, over to you.
Yeah, so, Michael, I'm sure everybody else is going to want to contribute on this one. I think it's one of the most horrific initiatives that the Labour Party have come in on. And as they are U-turning on absolutely everything that they said that they would deliver on their manifesto, the key issue of the winter fuel allowance for pensioners. Now, the application form, and there's, I believe, 30% of pensioners that don't even apply for the winter fuel allowance for whatever it might be. But the process to apply for it requires 243 questions to be answered. Now, let's get some context.
Yeah.
If you go and apply for a passport, you will have to answer between 30 and 50 questions.
Right.
You're asking people who are probably not very tech savvy, probably have, to a certain extent, a lessened mental agility.
Might not have a computer.
They may not have a
online
computer.
thing.
They may not have the ability to be able to do it themselves. They may be vulnerable. They may be frightened.
They'll probably be cold, so they won't be able to type.
They've lost the feel in their fingers to be able to use it. I mean, you know, it's beyond criminal. It's where I've seen in bureaucracy before. They put in all these hurdles, all these speed bumps to make it incredibly difficult for people to apply for processes. Unless it is, of course, you know, aided by certain lawyers who will assist certain minorities, let's say, to obtain housing, to obtain funds, to obtain, you know, social benefit. So our older communities who've been contributing their taxes for their entire working lives are now being discarded and thrown on a heap by Keir Starmer and his motley crew of muppets.
Well, I'll tell you what this is. It's callous, right?
It is.
That's the word. This is callous.
Yeah.
Especially as you've got MPs that actually are paid by the taxpayer to heat not one but two homes. So
and they're claiming for their electricity bill, their energy bill, for the second
we are
home.
then paying
And if you happen to come over on a small boat from France, having come from Syria, guess what happens? You go straight into a four-star hotel or accommodation with heating paid for by the taxpayer. This is absolutely disgusting and outrageous. And so the other thing that I think is disgusting and outrageous is the fact this isn't even going to go to a parliamentary vote.
No.
Keir Starmer has tried to cancel that, tried to obstruct
No, but
that.
I think he's been forced into having to have the vote now.
Well, let's see, because you know the problem's going to be when he gets a load of Labour rebels that rebel and say, look, I'm sorry, I know with the new government we should...
Well, I think that's what's going to happen.
We're going to
I think that's what's going to happen. There won't be enough of them to cause the bill to fail because when Rachel Reeves announced this, which was about a couple of weeks ago, 2.5 weeks or so ago, I've never seen our phones lighting up with so many people absolutely disgusted. And it weren't just people who were affected by it, it was everyone.
Everybody.
They were going, why have the one group of people that the Labour Party decided to attack, the one group of people for whom they're taking money away is the pensioners. And we know why, because they don't think the pensions matter. They don't think they're going to vote Labour. They think they're all going to die soon. And you're absolutely right to say it's completely and utterly callous.
It's disgusting.
And it's really, really
ridiculous.
It
actually just
but I think Starmer has also worked out that it was a bad idea. You know, I've been talking to a couple of what you might call Labour-friendly, you know, sort of pundits over the last week or so, and they've all begun to realise that they're getting so much flack in the constituencies. Local Labour MPs are getting letter after letter, email after email saying, why are you doing this? Why do you hate the elderly? You have to do something about it.
But it doesn't even save that much money. It's £1 billion quid.
Well, it's $1 billion and a bit. It's $1 billion and a bit, but they're already now taking $400 million from somewhere else and giving it to local councils to hand out to pensioners who are struggling. So they're actually only going to make
600 million.
Yeah, 600 million. So it's the whole thing is a complete mess.
And then there's this. You guys probably know the figure. This inordinate amount of money that's being still donated overseas for climate change.
Yeah,
11 billion.
That's 11 billion.
Yeah. I mean it's astounding.
We're paying
why is this money not being reinvested?
We're paying $8.5 billion for the migrants who have come here legally, who came here for work purposes or to be students, but who are not now doing either of those things. They've stayed, and now they're all on benefits. That's another $8.5 billion. So this black hole they keep talking about, we could solve it tomorrow.
And we haven't even touched on the public sector pay awards.
No, we haven't. They managed to find some money for them.
9 billion.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you fallen asleep, Alex? I'm a bit worried about you. You've gone very
No,
quiet.
it's getting cold in the studio.
Oh, well, you're not old enough to get the pensions allowance, I'm afraid.
No. Are you going cold in sympathy to the
I was going cold like this.
Don't do
that. Don't do that, whatever you do.
Mixing it all together.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, this £20 billion black hole, £22 billion black hole, whatever it is they say it is nonsense, isn't it?
I'm just exhausted by them already. How long have they been in?
9 weeks. It feels like they've been in for years, doesn't it?
9 weeks.
I'm exhausted by them already. It actually makes me miss the Conservatives.
Yeah.
I mean, here's a question.
Well, the thing that I liked about the
now.
Tories was that they were useless, but they didn't do anything. This lot are doing things which are actually harming the country.
Actually, my question is, and I'd love to know the answer to this, is how many of their points that they put forward in their electioneering manifesto have they actually about turned on?
All of them.
Well,
Pretty much all of them.
It's more the stuff they're doing that wasn't in the manifesto, including the removal of the winter fuel allowance, including amnesty for immigrants, including releasing 40,000 prisoners early. None of that stuff was in the manifesto.
No.
It's what I called the other day on Jeremy Kyle's show an electoral fraud, on the basis that if you don't say you're going to do this stuff, you can't then go and do it.
Okay, so Russell, how many have they delivered on? How many have they delivered on in terms of their manifesto?
Well, nothing. We'll find out. We'll find out when the budget comes. Because
exactly.
Then we'll get the real truth.
Which Starmer's already said is going to be, in his words, punishing.
Yeah, right.
Thanks
also,
for that.
where do they get this from, these politicians? We think that we elect them to punish us, like we're some kind of,
They're our servants.
Yeah, exactly right.
Public servants.
Yeah.
Are they?
They're supposed to be.
Somebody said to me, it's like we're in a domestic violence, abusive relationship with the government, and we're the ones that keep getting beaten up.
That's an unfortunate analogy, but very apt.
It is. It is, I'm afraid. Let's move on to something slightly less political, shall we?
Can I lighten the mood?
Crossroads.
Crossroads. So there's, I can kind of remember Crossroads.
I remember Benny from Crossroads.
Benny with the hat.
With the funny hat, I used to watch it. This is going back a very long way, but when we had the 3-day week, because there was always power cuts all over the place, I had to go to school one morning a week. Yeah. And so I spent most of the rest of the days watching afternoon television.
Both, Mike.
So it was like Crown Court, Crossroads.
Rumpole of the Bailey.
Rumpole of the Bailey. Yeah. I think a bit of Magnum PI. I mean, it was great. But Tales
there was so many blimmin' power cuts. Everyone was just watching their telly at the same time.
Also, by the way, under a Labour government, of course. Saying.
Well, Crossroads is now, it's kind of like the Pulp Fiction of the soaps. It's been slapped with a trigger warning.
Yes.
No. ITVX, they made something like 4,500.
And this is the original one, because they revamped it, didn't they?
Yeah, that's right. So this is the original that we would have watched, kind of late 70s, all being loaded onto ITVX. But they reckon the characters, the attitudes, the general kind of broadcast standards, are very much of their time. So there's a warning now. So it's like, it joins a long list of shows like Terry and June, for example.
But what kinds of things have they got on there that are offensive?
Yeah.
Well, they reckon themes, characters, quotes,
so the whole
some
thing.
Language. The whole
It's all offensive.
Yeah. I think
I've got to watch it now.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
Brilliant.
Well, I think we've got a clip. This is Noel Gordon leaving the show, it says here. Let's have a look.
Time to go, darling.
I remember it. Look at that eyeshadow.
Wow.
Oscar-winning.
I didn't know Cilla Black was in it.
If she closed the door, the whole set would come down.
Well,
brilliant show.
That was one of the things that you always noticed about those shows, was that the sets were always shaking, weren't they? Because you would close the door and it was kind of going reverberating
no one
around.
cared, right?
Yeah.
So what could possibly be offensive, seriously, about any aspect of that particular show?
Well, when you think about Terry and June, I mean, apart from the theme song, which actually does seem very out of date now and far too camp for a kind of early 80s show. I think it's just general attitudes, maybe quotes, and characters, stereotypical characters. That's what they're saying. ITVX.
Purported misogyny.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing to boot, I suppose.
Homophobia.
I got to watch it now.
I was in a hotel on Sunday night. You know when you go to a hotel and you just have like the crap television, so you sort of flick through the channels and you just find anything to land upon. So you end up watching something that you wouldn't normally
It normally takes me so long to work out how the TV works, I just go to sleep.
So I was going through the channels and my other half said, let's watch this. And it was Alf Garnett.
Right.
It was on.
Oh, Alf Garnett hasn't aged well.
So I was like, I've not seen this before. So I was like, okay. I was like, wow. You wouldn't be allowed to make this today. It was like, wow.
It was
Alf was probably really at that end.
I mean, it was cutting-edge comedy as well at the time. Johnny Spade, the writer, was a brilliant writer.
So in this one episode, he was famed for having various young men who'd come to stay with him, young non-British-born men, and just all the dialogue around it. Just
like Rising Down was the same.
Exactly right. It was amazing, absolutely incredible. Well, I mean, we're going to get to the last section of the show now, because coming up, my final nomination. It's our favourite newspaper, you might be pleased to know. I'm not going to tell you exactly what it is, but you'll get the idea. It's not shaped like any other, and it's made from the lefties' point of view. We'll be coming back with the plank of the week, and who's going to win it right after this. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. We are in the final furlong. I'm going to choose who's going to win it coming up shortly. But first, my final nomination, and it is, of course, everyone's favourite newspaper, The Guardian. Or the Graniad, which has had plenty of rubbish in it this week, as it always does. But one particular article stood out, and it was by a bloke who's got one of the greatest comedy names I've ever seen, Robert Reich. Who became known as Third Reich after he decided.
That wasn't a massive stretch, was it?
After he decided to call for the sort of destruction of Elon Musk. Right, he wrote this piece in which he said this. He said, Elon Musk is out of control. Here is how to rein him in. He may be the richest man in the world, but that doesn't mean we're powerless to stop him. So, I mean, he pretty much called for everything, including the arrest of Elon Musk, right? He said that he publicly, these are amongst his, criminal acts. He publicly endorsed Donald Trump last night as if that was something that was illegal. Yeah. Before that, Musk helped form a pro-Trump super political action committee. Meanwhile, the former US president has revived his presence on the X platform.
So it's a typical left approach, which is I want to ban anything that I don't agree with.
Yeah. Yes. And he basically had a go at him for everything. And in company with Mr. Reich was, of course, the wonderfully named Carol Cadwallader, who said this. Inciting rioters in Britain was a test run for Elon Musk. Just see what he plans for America.
She needs to be a bit careful, doesn't she?
Well, she's always paying out money to people that she slags off.
That woman is mental, right? That woman spent months and months and months and months pursuing me, telling me I worked for Cambridge Analytica. And I was like, Carol, I was there and I didn't work for Cambridge. No, you did. I'm like, you can't tell someone that they had a job that they never had.
I know. Unbelievable.
She's mad.
Right.
She's
here
mad.
are the messages that Mr. Reich wants you to get, right? So, number one, here's 6 ways that you've got to destroy Elon Musk. 1, boycott Tesla. I mean, if that's not a Guardian instruction, I don't know what it is.
Middle-class dictator.
Can you imagine going up and down the working-class streets of Rotherham saying, don't you go buying a Tesla now, because the man who makes them is a bad man.
Yeah, no coconut lattes or
wheatgrass. Come on, Mike.
Yeah,
what's the next
I'm also
one?
banning private jets. Yeah, advertisers should boycott X, which a lot of them did, and then Elon Musk decided to sue them. Regulators around the world should threaten Musk with arrest if he doesn't stop disseminating lies and hate on X. Right?
Yeah, don't throw stones when you're in a greenhouse.
Yeah. The Federal Trade Commission should demand that Musk take down lies that are likely to endanger individuals, and if he does not, he should be sued by the United States Federal Commission. The US government also has powers over Musk if we're willing to use them. The US should terminate its contracts with him, starting with SpaceX. So, I mean, this guy is literally absolutely gone back.
All because Elon Musk has an opinion that differs to his.
Yes, and also he's quite a powerful man, quite a clever man, and he's not going to listen to any garbage from these characters because one of the things that apparently upset Mr. Reich was that when the European Union had a go at Elon Musk, and they said to him in the form of the European Union Commissioner Thierry Breton, he sent Musk an open letter reminding him that there were EU laws preventing him from disseminating harmful content. Do you know what Elon Musk said to him?
Go on.
Take a big step back and literally your own face.
Brilliant. I love that.
So he's 20 million or so Twitter followers.
Right.
I love that.
Whatever he's got.
Oh, I think it's about 100 million.
I love the fact, so in Brazil...
Genius.
In Brazil, you've got this mad Supreme Court
in Brazil.
who also hates Elon Musk and sort of pushed to have the platform blocked in Brazil. Now it's gone all leftist and mad over there. And they've had to try and get people to comply to blocking the platform. So they've had to go to Starlink and said, oh, by the way, your satellites are enabling the platform to be beamed down to Brazil. This is what I love about all the leftists who hate Elon Musk. When they turn around and go like, well, we've got to ban electric vehicles. Oh, we got to... get rid of all the satellites in the sky. They just can't do it. Elon literally right now could be like, buy European Parliament.
It's not 1066, so you can't just ban things like that.
I know we won't have one on the premises for obvious reasons, but if you had a copy of The Guardian in your hands now, I bet you'd be doing that again.
I would be, yeah. I haven't ripped one up for a while.
That's time you do.
But this guy, I might have to, Yeah, I'll rip it up digitally, shall I?
I'll just throw an iPad.
The Guardian's becoming more and more like Beano or something.
No, but you know what's really funny? They've been doing some really funny stuff. A friend of mine who does a TV column sends me little snippets out of it every so often. And they've got this ludicrous sort of feature that they do of 2 people who disagree politically. And here's a great idea, guys. Let's have them have lunch together and see if they can get along.
Yeah.
That's their idea of normality, right? And it's like, Theresa was a Brexiteer. She was amazed to find out that she could actually talk to Johnny, who was a Remainer. And you're kind of going, yeah, well, that's what normal people do, actually. We don't always agree with each other. You know, sometimes you go out for dinner with people
we don't
that
hate each other based on somebody else's ideology.
But for them, this is revelatory. You know, absolutely unbelievable.
Love it.
Anyway, so that's the final analysis. I've got to say, I mean, I'm just going to add up how many Labour people we had in this time. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so 5 Labour MPs this week, slightly less than last week. But I wonder whether it just has to be Keir Starmer for the portrait of Maggie.
Not for the last time.
Not for the last time, and probably something which is, he might actually, at this rate, the way they're going, he's going to knock Harry and Meghan off the perch for Plank of the Year. You know, so we can bring the portrait back for the end. So there we are, Keir Starmer, Prime Minister. By the way, just a reminder, you are now the Prime Minister. Rishi Sunak isn't the Prime Minister anymore, so you can stop calling him that, Prime Minister. That was Plank of the Week. Thanks to Alex, thanks to Russell, thanks to Will, thanks to Steve Denyer. We'll see you back here same time next week.